The build show's in Norway. We're in Kristiansen, where if you look in the distance, their iconic church, we are not allowed to build any higher than that. And we happen to be on a 15-story condo project, believe it or not, the tallest building in this town. And commercial construction here in Norway, in some respects, looks exactly the same as the US. In other ways, it's totally different. Today's build show, how do they build commercial buildings in Norway? Well, let's get going. Say commercial construction, this is what I think of. Poured concrete floors, steel beams, floors above me that are steel, a big concrete core, there's probably an elevator and maybe a service core in here. But here's what's totally different, well, several things totally different. Check this out, it looks like a shipping container. It's got this metal frame and this rock wool. What's going on here? It took me a second to figure it out. This is already pre-plumbed and pre-electrical. Here's the electrical outlets. This is a fully finished bathroom. Tiled fixtures, everything, craned into place. There's some lash points and the door's locked. So this bathroom in this condo, totally finished off-site and just dropped into place. That's totally different, but look at this. Wood framing on a commercial project. Isn't this crazy? So this rock wool that you're seeing here that's been shot in place, and it's a rigid style rock wool, there's a steel column in here. It's wrapped in rock wool, and then they did all the perimeter framing on the whole building in a true 2 by 8, 2 inches by 8 inches thick. So I've got this big cavity, but it's actually deeper than that because there's another 2 inches outboard of that that forms an exterior insulation cavity. And it also gives me a place to frame my windows with typical wood framing. So if we walk outside here, you can see that this frame for the window is all 2 by 8 construction. And so if we look down here, you can see this window now is all framed out and ready to go. So we can install a window into a wood framed wall. And then if you look where this framing meets the concrete here at this deck, you'll see there's a big gasket in there, some type of a foam gasket. And then these guys over here are installing rock wool into the cavity where you can see right here. And then if I look down, or I just come around the corner, you'll see the guys are installing gypsum over top of that. So the same guys that are doing the rock wool in the cavities are installing the gypsum as we go. And then they're taping that with a Siga tape, that's Siga Wegelove, so that drywall layer is the fireproof layer on the outside. It's also an air tightness layer. They're gonna come back later with a membrane, sounds like a black Siga product that's meant to have a little bit of UV stability, because the final facade on here is gonna be an open joint rain screen system. And as you look at some of the other buildings around that they've built, you can kind of get a flavor for that. It's a water managed, drainable cladding system. But I think it's absolutely wild that you see these windows and this exterior wall being framed in wood. Their fire codes are obviously a little different. They love wood here in this climate zone. They're trying to probably reduce the amount of steel they need in the buildings. But ultimately, this big, thick 10-inch cavity that they've got will get fully insulated with rock wool. And you know, wood is an insulator too. Wood has roughly an R value of 1 per inch. So even this stud bay right here, which is 10-inch deep, has an R10 layer. Let's go see what Steve thinks is interesting about this building.
All right, so we've made it up to the 15th floor. Absolutely beautiful view of the harbor. We're in one of the units here on the top floor. Now, there's a couple interesting things happening up here that I was surprised to see. One of which is we have a lot of wood framing here. Typically in the US, we would see this wood framing getting substituted for a metal framing, and then most likely some type of exterior insulation. But here, these are, I'm guessing, around a 2 by 10. They're a little bit bigger than what we're used to. And then they're using this exterior gypsum board as a sheathing. And then they're gonna seal those joints with a Wegelove tape, which is made by Siga. Very, very aggressive tape, but makes for a very good air barrier. And as peculiar as what I'm seeing here, there's even more kind of differences in the way that they did this outside deck. So why don't we head outside here and take a look. So we're out on this outside deck. This is a, you know, low slope asphalt membrane here. But one of the things that I find very, very interesting is that they build a trough for the roof drain. Now, in America, we'd have these four corners of the rectangle, and it would basically all shed water to a central location somewhere here, and then we would have the drain there. And it would make for a very simple shower pan, if you will. That's all we're building out here. Instead of a 3x5 shower, we're building probably about a 15-foot by 40-foot shower pan. And we're doing it out of the roofing. But here, they build this trough, and you can see it actually slopes from there down to here, and from the end there, all the way down to here. And the problem that I have with it is, why are you building the trough? I don't understand the benefit of it. I might have a very small inkling as to why they did it, but the problem I really have with it is, look at all of these joints that you have to create. And you're creating those joints in a very small dimension, meaning that roofing's coming across, it's dropping down 1.5 inches and creating the trough. Well, in water management, anytime I change the shape or change the plane of my weather resistive or my water barrier, then I really challenge the system, right? Because it's all of these little joints here that I have to get right, and I have to get them perfect, because not only am I putting that in a challenged area, but all the water is draining. So these, say, 16 or 18 joints that I counted up here, they're seeing the most water of this whole system. So they're always getting challenged. They're getting challenged with a high volume of water, which makes me question, why would you put that trough in? Secondly, in America, typically, we would have our primary roof drain, but then upstream from it, we would have a secondary drain. The secondary drain would just have a pipe that drops down and connects into the riser of the primary drain. Not a whole lot of magic. But the success of that dual drain system is the primary drain is always at the lowest point of the roof. And it's the one that's most susceptible to accumulating stuff, dirt, leaves. Now, obviously we're not getting a lot of leaves up here, but dirt and stuff that's coming with the rain falls down and eventually accumulates and blocks that primary drain. So the water would simply back upstream until it hits the secondary drain and then go down it. The problem with that is that you never really know there's a problem there until the secondary drain fails, right? Unless you do routine maintenance to keep the primary drain clean. But what they've done here that I've noticed is they do have the primary drain and they do have a backup system. If we walk down here and we follow this trough upstream, you'll notice there's a little scupper in the curb there, and that will allow the water to overflow outside of the building. And if you remember in a lot of my videos, I always talk about dual sump pumps, putting the second sump pump in a location where it becomes a visual cue to failure. Well, that's what we have here. If that drain fails, this whole trough fills up with water, it drains here and it reveals itself on the outside of the building, so that the building maintenance personnel will understand that, hey, we have a failing drain up there because water's coming out of the scupper, which it shouldn't be, right? I'm just gonna go back over here because I'm gonna leave you with why I think they do the trough. Now, we're walking on this roof. It is probably most likely gonna get finished with some type of decking material, some type of rail. I mean, it's an absolutely gorgeous view of the harbor and the city there, so we don't want to waste that. So we create this exterior deck. Now, depending on where that deck is, if it's pretty shallow to that surface, then when we get a heavy rainstorm, we need a way to get rid of a lot of water quickly. So we build that canal here so that, think of it as putting like an 8-inch gutter on the building. Like, it could take a lot of water and get rid of it quickly. So they build that gutter, but the problem I have with that line of thinking is that drain is still only about a 3-inch diameter. So as much water as this gutter can take, it can only take as much water as that drain is willing to take. But anyways, really cool view, really cool system. I question a lot of things that are happening here. I'm not saying in America we do it right or we do it better, but we do it different. We're on the 8th floor. You saw we up on the 15th floor there where we shot some of the decking. Down here, we're going to take a look at how they're insulating and how they're basically roughing out the interior here. So we have a number of concrete walls, but you can see pretty much most of the framing. This appears to be about a 2.5-inch metal stud. But notice, to carry the baseboard, they basically screw in these flaps down below. Now, it seems a little flimsy, but once they put the drywall on it, that'll stiffen that right up, but then it'll give them that kind of continuous backer to go through there. As we walk through here, notice we have one of those bathroom pods again here. And yes, they're still, oh, someone busted through that one. Wasn't me, just for the record. Couple things that I noticed here also is their electrical system is a little different. I tried to twist these to see if I could open it. I don't know if they pop off or what exactly. Yeah, so they just pop off. These are kind of, they seem like dust caps or caps that you would put on all the wires in there. But notice everything in the wall runs through this plastic conduit, which is a little different than what we're doing. Here we can see this is one of those bathroom pods, and you can see it's fully hooked up. So they have hot water pipes insulated there. They have a bunch of electrical conduit. They got the drain from the toilet that drops down into the main drain. The reason I know that is this is the panel for the wall-mounted toilet to sit on the outside, and then everything kind of converges onto that drain. Now, one of the interesting things here that is somewhat of a surprise to me is their use of poly. Right? So this was that 2x8 wall that we talked about upstairs, and it basically gets filled with an 8-inch fiberglass. There's a piece over here that we'll talk about, and we'll come back and talk about it to set the wall, but here you can see it, right? So the whole wall is basically getting fitted out with just fiberglass bats, which in America, we always tend to think that, yeah, that's probably the most economical solution, but with that comes a number of questions, as you can imagine. But notice here, they put that bat up and then they put a poly. This feels like it's probably on the order of about a 6 mil poly. Now we saw it at a few other projects here where they seal it, but the thing that I question from a building science perspective is this is an 8-inch wall with the poly vapor barrier on the cold side, northern climate here in Norway, but we have gypsum board on the other side, which means we don't have a lot of energy making it through that 8-inch wall, but we also have some nooks and crannies around the bats and around the edges that we could potentially take moisture-laden air and get it out to that cold surface. And then if we have that cold surface with the poly on the inside, we're creating a potential building science question, verge nightmare. But what they do here to complete that is the poly is actually in, I won't say the middle of the wall, but it's somewhat buried in the wall because they put these 2x2 straps on the outside. Notice these are 24 inches on center and we don't have a piece. I'll be right back. I'm just going to grab a piece. You'll see here they actually get this insulation that's cut just for that. So this will get tucked nice and neatly into that system there and basically finish the wall. So they're using this raceway so that all of the electrical on the exterior wall is getting placed inboard of that poly, which I've always said that even though we think of this as the vapor barrier, what I think is happening there is that it's a pretty darn good air barrier, even though we have the exterior gypsum board and it's taped with the Sika tape. This is acting more like an air barrier than a vapor barrier in my mind, due to the success of the wall. But anyways, for the ceiling treatment, you can see they have this pretty interesting track system that a bunch of horizontal straps get dropped in. There's the main kind of girder that everything clicks into. It's suspended down probably about 3 or so inches from the upper, from the rough ceiling there, that concrete plank. And then that gives you the ability to run a bunch of things like the electrical, run some of the fire suppression system there. But we also have some blue tubes up here, which I would only guess are the ventilation system for the house. So anyways, pretty cool, but like so many things we're seeing in Norway, I walk out of here with probably just as many questions as I do answers. So hopefully you enjoyed that.
All right, Steve, we moved down to the 8th floor so you can see what's happening. Give us a tour. What's happening out here?
This is MyVest's 700 barrier here, which is one of their best, but it is what you call it, UV protected.
Yeah, that's where the black comes from.
That's where the black comes from, and I believe it's a little bit more durable than anything that they have. We're actually doing a project where we're using it on a project.
And it's basically right over the gypsum layer.
It's
and
right
this
over.
Must be a self-sealing tape for the layer that flaps over.
That's exactly
attach.
what that is.
Okay.
That's exactly what that is.
And then talk me through the rain screen. Why all the weird layers?
So we have a bunch of double layers, which I'm not totally convinced on the multiple layers, but it is a horizontal product that is gray in color. So it's an open rain screen product. So this is made so that when you look through the joints, you see the same color happening there. This is certainly providing some effective drying, but honestly, I'm not quite sure why the panel isn't just attached to that.
Okay, so I think I've got it. I think I realized it. So these stud spacing is a little odd. It's like 24-inch on center studs. So this is into the studs, but they needed this horizontal because they were worried that their panels wouldn't line up with the studs correctly.
Gotcha.
And then this next rain screen, they could figure out their panel spacing and put this vertical on. So these are on studs. The horizontal allows them to go wherever they want. And then the last vertical, if you look down here into this cavity, which is a little scary because we're 8 stories up, you can see the final cladding is real thin.
Yeah.
It's like almost like a laminate material.
Yeah, it's about a 1/4 inch. It's like a polymer panel that has like almost like a metallic finish.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is there's a building on the other side there. That metallic finish doesn't turn the corners on the panel.
Oh, interesting.
So it's really, I question how that's going to weather.
Yeah, I wonder. That's interesting. And then it's face screwed as well. So the good news is it could be replaced easily on the outside.
Yeah, per panel.
Yeah, and we've got good ventilation on there. Let's go see if we can get into one of these units. Okay, y'all, slipping my shoes off here. We get to take a quick look at a finished bathroom. Remember, this is the pod that we saw craning in. And this is fascinating. Look, it's one big wet room. Kind of reminds me of the Japanese style. The doors fold back so you can get some space in here. And part of that is probably because this door opens, and this is a spot for a washer and dryer. So probably like a European style, a Miele heat pump, dryer and washer. There's a little cutaway right here that takes the water and the drain under the sink area, which is probably under here. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, just barely. And like I said earlier, this is all totally pre-done, pre-installed, pre-tiled. They kept the doors locked until just now under construction. So until the very, very final, they've been leaving this totally closed. And it's a little hard to see, but there's a slight change in the floor elevation right here. And when this door opens, the door stops right at that tile bump, so water's going to go back in there. But this whole room is basically a wet room, big tiled floor. And I thought it was interesting, the toilet's pre-installed too, and on another floor we're able to see the outlet for that wall hung, looks like a Growy toilet, but hard to tell. I suspect it's a Gaboret carriage back there. Pretty cool. This is fun to see. Steve, what'd you think, man? A little different, wasn't it?
It was. First of all, it's a construction project. It is a commercial project in Norway.
Yeah, pretty cool to see, and crazy to see how much wood on the job site.
Yeah, I was absolutely blown away at the wood. And again, we said it yesterday when we were at the other project, how some of their means are so progressive, but some of them seem archaic. It's like, it's kind of a weird spectrum of stuff that they're doing.
It's a weird dichotomy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Pretty crazy. Guys, if you're not already following Steve Basic on Instagram, go check him out. He's posting all the time, and he also has some amazing videos over on thebuildshow.com. But big thanks to our friends at Siga for bringing us over to Norway. We got a bunch more content. Go check out our other videos, but I thought my commercial building friends would be really interested to see what a big commercial building looks like. Guys, follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Otherwise, we'll see you next time on The Build Show.